live by the laws of your plants. Please give me split leaves. Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Emma, and today we're going to talk about the very popular, ever so trendy Monstera Deliciosa. Woo! Also known more commonly as a Swiss cheese plant because of the fenestrations or holes or splits in the leaves that it has. And it has these holes because in its tropical native environment there's really strong winds and rains and stuff, and so the leaves would just get ripped to shreds if they didn't have these holes in them. So therefore the plant's protection, it has evolved into this magnificent, super trendy, fabulous creature. So the splits form actually only in the mature leaves of the plant. As you can see, there are other leaves in here that don't have the splits, and they don't have those because they're the younger leaves. When I bought this plant, actually, it didn't have any splits in its leaves, which is fine because I knew that it was just a baby plant, and now it's an adolescent. I've got 2 split leaves. I'm sure I'll get more eventually, but this was the first split leaf I had, and it is magnificent. The second one, slightly less holy, not totally sure why. There could be a couple different reasons, but these guys can grow massive in the wild. I've seen Monstera leaves online and Instagram and stuff that are 2 feet or like 60 centimeters in diameter, which is insane. Some, you see how these have like kind of single splits? Some have single splits and then tiny little holes like this one, more inwards from that, which is totally crazy. They just get huge. Pretty easy to care for. Generally doesn't ask for all that much. It isn't as demanding as a lot of other tropical houseplants are. So it's a pretty easy plant for beginners. I'd say it's probably about a beginner to intermediate level plant. It's not super hard to take care for, but you can't just leave it alone and do nothing with it. So it takes a little bit of care, but really not as much as a lot of other plants I've talked about on my channel here. So that's good. Before we get into it, I just want to say that if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up down below and leave a comment on other plant things you'd like me to talk about next, and hopefully I can provide for you. Right, so let's get into it. First off, when it comes to watering, they like it fairly moist. Certainly don't let them dry out too much. They like to be watered when the top inch or 2 or 2 to 6 centimeters is dry. So you can measure that by sticking your finger in or a water meter down just that depth into the soil and seeing whether or not it's dry. And if it's dry, give it a quick water. They are a little bit drought tolerant, so they can last if you're not gonna water them all that much. But they definitely don't like sitting in water or being overwatered. If they are getting overwatered, they'll show signs of yellowing leaves, and that's a sign of root rot. You don't want your roots to rot because then the other parts of the plant rot and then it dies. So try not to overwater. It's probably better to underwater than overwater this guy. They also like to be well drained, so when you're planting, it's important to make sure your pot has drainage holes. I have the classic nursery pot within the cash pot situation, and that's really good because I can water it through and thoroughly, and once it's drained out the bottom, I can dump this in the sink and let it be on its merry way. And it still gets to look beautiful in this pot I've got here, so we all win here. When it comes to light, their ideal is bright but indirect light. Direct sunlight, especially a lot of it, can lead to the leaves getting burnt, and you don't want that. Sunburnt leaves pretty much end up dying, and so it's a bit useless because then your plant gets smaller or dies completely off, and you don't want that. So it's just better to not give it direct sunlight. Also, if they're not getting enough light, if they're in too dark of a space, they'll stop growing as much, or the leaves will have less holes or splits in them. I think that's why this one has less holes than the first one does, but that could be for a myriad of things. It could have just wanted to put out a leaf with 1 hole instead of one with 6. So it really depends. It's not an affirmative as to that the low light caused the 1 hole sitch going on here, but it's possible. So it's in a bit of a brighter location now. It gets more indirect bright light, I think, through more of the day. It's about 1 meter or 3 feet from a southwest facing window that never really gets direct sun to its specific location. It's kind of to the side of it. It's not right in front of it. So it just lives there. I think it's liking it a bit better than where it used to live in my room, which was a northeast facing window where it didn't really get as much bright light in the day. So hopefully it's liking its situation a little bit better now than it was before, and I will get more leaves with splits because I think they look really cool. I think it's super interesting how plants just decided, hey, you know what'll help us stop dying and getting shredded? Let's put holes in them. That's fantastic. I just think plants are amazing. I just don't understand how they are so cool. So the ideal temperatures for your Monstera Deliciosa is pretty much home temperatures. Their ideal is between 68 and 86 degrees Fahrenheit or 20 to 30 degrees Celsius. If they drop below 65 degrees Fahrenheit, 18 degrees Celsius, they will start to slow their growth. So it's pretty common over the winter months for them to slow down growing because it's not as warm. Also, if they get below 50 degrees Fahrenheit or 10 degrees Celsius, they'll stop growing completely. They'll just be stagnant. So that's not ideal. I'm sure they'd prefer to not stop growing. And I don't think they'd be very happy in that environment. So if that is the case, move them to a bit of a warmer spot. Heat your house, I guess. Don't leave them outside in the colder places in the world. When it comes to humidity, they do like a little bit of humidity. Not too much. They don't need it constantly, multiple times a day, like some other plants. They could probably go with a misting every few days or a couple times a week, just to give them that little extra boost of humidity. If they're not getting enough humidity, you'll notice because they'll start getting brown tips on the leaves. You don't want that, so give them a little bit more humidity. I mist it quite regularly, every other day to a few times a week. Feeding is super simple. Just give them some fertilizer every month or so in the spring and summer because that's the growing season, and not at all in the autumn and winter. And they'll seem to love that. I think I did just about that, and it's fine. I used just the basic Miracle-Gro and the typical half strength because I do that with everything and it's easier just to make one big batch. If they do need a little bit more fertilizer, they might not make as many holes in the leaves as well, so maybe that was it. Maybe I didn't give it enough fertilizer, but they should be fine. It's probably not that much of an issue. Do it once a month in the summer and spring and you'll be good. Good to go. Propagation is pretty simple. Because it's a vining plant, they can be propagated by cutting the stem just below a node with an aerial root. You take that cutting and you stick it in some water or some moist soil, and in time it'll root, and bam, new plant. 2 plants for the price of 1. Also, if you propagate stems with holes in the leaves, you'll get a plant that automatically has holes in the leaves. Monsteras are, in fact, toxic to dogs and cats and people and stuff. So if they're ingested, it can cause irritation and even vomiting to your intestines and your stomach and your mouth and stuff. So don't eat your plants, especially this one. And if you don't eat it, you'll be fine. Or put them out of reach of your babies and toddlers and pets and stuff. So that's your best bet. Because monsteras can get quite big, they can get a bit unruly, and it is a vine, so they'll just spread out once they get big if they don't have anything to latch onto. So a typical practice for bigger monsteras is to put a moss pole into the soil and that's good to do when you're repotting, which you could probably do every 2 or 3 years because they don't grow super duper fast. But stick a moss pole in the soil. You could even use a trellis, but I think a moss pole is the standard, is probably a bit better, because the aerial roots that grow from the vine like to have something to grow into because they will just grow up it then. If your plant is still small and it's got aerial roots, you can just kind of stick them into the soil or cut them off if you really don't like the way they look. I don't really have many. I've got a tiny little one and one that got stuck into the soil because it was quite low down and my plant was quite small. So I don't really have to worry about that problem yet, but maybe I will in the future if my plant gets big. We'll see. We'll find out when it happens. Also, it's really important that you don't let the leaves collect too much dust because it stops the plant from photosynthesizing because it blocks those cells. So it's good to give them a good wipe with a damp cloth every once in a while to make sure that that's not happening. So that's it. That's all you need to know in order to take care of your very own Monstera Deliciosa, the famous Instagram plant. Hopefully that has helped. If you don't have one and were thinking of getting one, do it. Most homes are totally fine with them. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment down below on other things you'd like me to talk about in the future, and subscribe for more videos. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time. Bye!